Ralsei, the healer of the bunch. We know him well. Just a fluffy pal who wants to help the team. So it was of some surprise to me to see the abundance of slander in his royal name. Many a theory has been woven in saying that he is not the goat he's cracked up to be. Though these theories hold much ground and are very well put together, I feel less than fully convinced that Raleigh wants anything other than to help his friends. From here I intend on going through many of the major theories concerning Ralsei's motives, starting with this theory revolves around the character-flavored teas you can buy in the shopping district in the cyberworld. Each tea has varying effects on each party member corresponding to the party's relationship. For instance, if Susie drinks Chris or Ralsei tea, she is healed 120 health because of the friendship she has formed with the both of them. However, when Null drinks Ralsei tea, the effect is minimal, as at the time, Ralsei would be a complete stranger to her. It is important, however, to note that it is impossible for Null to drink Ralsei tea without hacking the game, so a bit of salt should be held. So, where this leads into the Ralsei situation is how while Chris reciprocates the 120 health from Susie tea, if they drink Ralsei tea, that only heals 50 health. That's 10 less than their reaction to Null tea. This has led some to think that Ralsei has done something to Chris that we are not aware of, namely when Ralsei urged Chris to imagine what Susie is doing in both chapters. As we cut back, Ralsei is saying something to Chris as if instructing or informing them on something. Some take this as Ralsei trying to get Chris to open up more dark fountains for some nefarious plot. While something suspicious is certainly happening here, I doubt this specifically is the case for several reasons. First off, it doesn't seem like it'd be needed for Chris to make more dark fountains, as the knight has presumably been doing this already. Chris wasn't needed to create the Cyberworld Dark Tower, confirmed as Queen explains how the knight came and made the tower. Why would Ralsei need to incite the creation of more fountains by Chris if someone has already been doing it? Furthermore, if Ralsei is so set on having more dark fountains created, then why would Ralsei stop the creation of Berdly's Smart World Tower and scare everyone out of making fountains with his speech about the roaring and the terror it would cause? Would it not make more sense for him to act along, allow Berdly to make his new tower, and gain whatever he wanted the fountains for? Concerning the ending sequence of Deltarune 2, in which Chris seemingly opens up a dark fountain, I don't believe this was the case. It very well could have been a dream sequence or another fake-out like the ending of Chapter 1. I imagine it might turn out something like Chris went out and popped their mom's tires so that they could walk to school with Susie. As for the actual freaking fountain that was opened up, probably just pie. Ralsei clearly doesn't want any harm done to Chris or has false feeling towards them. We can see that Ralsei is healed by the big 120 HP from Chris's tea. This shows that the contempt is solely from Chris. Running back to the tea theory, it's not as if Chris flat out hates Ralsei based off the tea results. Ralsei only laid slightly less than Null, someone Chris has known for years. Chris only met Ralsei yesterday as of Chapter 2, so it's understandable they might be a bit uneasy. Sure, Chris has been friends with Susie for the same amount of time, but they had still known her. Chris met Ralsei under really strange circumstances. He's very different from anything they'd seen before, being a Darkener, and most of all, is very similar and clearly represents his brother Asriel. Imagine going into your school's janitorial closet and meeting an alien that looks just like your brother. I would certainly be a tad reprehensive. Towards the end of Chapter 2, Ralsei reveals that as dark fountains are erected and the dark world presence spreads, an event called the Roaring would occur and destroy the light and dark worlds alike. Many seem distrustful of this information, thinking that Ralsei has been purposely keeping this away from the group until now, or flat out making it up. This would coincide with an idea that the dark fountains are actually good, and Ralsei doesn't want them around for whatever reason. This idea holds some merit in that it is directly questioned by Susie if the dark fountains are actually bad. I hold the sentiment that Ralsei is at least not purposely lying about the nature of the fountains, and is only sharing what he knows. Many see the lack of knowledge of the roaring and the prophecy in the other characters like King and Queen as evidence that Raleigh has been lying about it. This doesn't feel right to me, as there is at least a small understanding of the prophecy held by the king shown in his combat dialogue. Jevil also alludes to the roaring in dialogue you get from beating him up in Chapter 1. So it's clear to see that the prophecy isn't completely unheard of. Ralsei is clearly a special Darkener, being one of the only to spawn from the universal Dark Fountain, being able to travel between dark worlds, and not turn to stone upon spending too much time in those alternate worlds. He knows plenty about the prophecy, and even some of the outside world. We haven't seen much of the Castletown Castle yet, but it shouldn't be too hard to imagine a vast library of books pertaining to Darkeners, Lightners, and the prophecies that surround them. As for why Ralsei would have kept this information from Chris and Susie up until this point is beyond me. Maybe he thought it would worry the party too much and didn't want anyone scared. This would line up with his actions after the Spampton fight in which he tried to console Chris by urging him not to think about what had just happened too hard. And who knows, Maybe somewhere in that dense manual of his, he mentioned the roaring and just assumed the gang actually cared enough to read it. Chapter 2 introduced the Castle Town mechanic, where the enemies you spare end up at your base and form a sort of Darkner community. With this, many came to the conclusion that Ralsei was trying to build an army of Darkners by overthrowing the other kingdoms and recruiting them to his side. This is used not only to validate the idea of Ralsei wanting Chris to make new Dark Fountains, but also to further portray him as evil. Though I have already explained how I don't think Ralsei is trying to get Chris to make more Dark Fountains, I still feel inclined to try and go against this aspect of Ralsei's speculation. This theory mainly revolves around the idea that Ralsei wants to control the other Darkners as the Prince of Darkness. However, we can see that the denizens of the castle towns don't have much loyalty for Ralsei. The Card Kingdom refugees seem loyal to Lancer, as he is able to convince them all to forgive the party in the event a genocide route was taken in Chapter 1, and Chaos King and the other kings are all locked up. Once you gather those from the cyberworld, they don't seem very caring of Ralsei's authority either. Take for instance the shopkeeper who has taken Ralsei's practice dummy to make a display. When Ralsei made a royal decree as the Prince of Darkness, he was promptly ignored, so it is reasonable to believe that the Cyber Darkners are still loyal to the Queen, or at the very least, loyal to nobody. Some could make the argument that Ralsei has kept the other Card Kings in jail in order to keep himself in power, but Queen is still allowed to roam free, so I doubt this could be the case. We must also take into consideration that Ralsei informs you at the very start of the game that by betraying those you have recruited, you can grow stronger. If Ralsei was so deceitful as to purposefully keep away vital information from the team like the roaring, then why would he also inform Chris immediately of the benefits of thinning his subjects? Both can't be true, so I think it's safe to say that he isn't trying to deceive the party in any way. Why would Ralsei want to rule a town of those who don't even follow him? He hasn't imposed any harshness over the subjects, if you could even call them that, as they mostly quarrel among themselves on the jobs they take in the town and where they set up their homes, like in the case of that musical trio who just plopped their house in the middle of town. As I hopefully have gotten across, I think there is still much more we can know about Ralsei. There's definitely something going on under the hood that we can't know yet, but I don't think it's something malevolent. I mean nothing foul to those theorizing against our Princey boy, but only wish to challenge them in understanding this wonderful game of Deltarune. I have several of those theories I referenced in the description, and I'd highly recommend you watch them if you enjoyed this video. If you have any counterpoints, theories, or insults you'd like to submit to me, I would love to hear them in the comments below. If this gets enough traction, I may make a part 2 or another similar video discussing a whole different theory. So make sure to subscribe and hit that bell